let's get into Brian Kelly, man. Because the question is, as you mentioned, LSU Athletics hot right now. Scott Woodward hires Kim Mulkey. She comes in, takes a LSU women's basketball program that won 9 games the year she took over. Year 2, I think they finished second in the SC second round of the tournament, and then, or excuse me, year 1, and then in year 2 they win the national championship. With transfers, some big name transfers as well. Then Jay Johnson, hired from Arizona to be the baseball coach, which everybody's like, man, like, it's a weird hire, you know? He's a West Coast guy. Is he going to fit in? Well, he comes in, turns the baseball program around immediately, and now LSU wins their first baseball national championship in 14 years in year number 2. Well, Scott Woodward also hired Brian Kelly. He also had a great year 1, beat Alabama, won the West, but now it's like, Kelly, it's year 2. It's time to win a natty, right? Do you think is there pressure on Brian Kelly to win a natty this year, Aaron?
I think in a fun way of, kind of joking, like, okay, LSU is still viewed as a football school. I know there's a rich baseball tradition. The women's team obviously run with Mulkey there, but I think in a fun way, it's kind of like we're riding this high right now, and we feel like we're unstoppable, and we had success year 1. We got a coach that's bringing discipline and a winning culture. We didn't win at Notre Dame, but like you and I can both agree, most people out there that want to throw shade at Notre Dame, that want to throw shade at Brian Kelly, winning at Notre Dame in this era of football is not easy. No. And he did that. And to get to even a national championship at Notre Dame, even though they got crushed, is a hell of an accomplishment. So he brings that discipline. He brings that winning mentality. They got a talented roster. They won in year 1. So, like, yes, there is, to me, there's sort of this fun sense of we're riding high. We got a returning quarterback. We got all the things necessary to win a championship. I don't think it would be like disappointing if he didn't, because I still think that there's, and I would say this, and you obviously would know this better than me being boots on the ground there. I still think that if you ask majority of LSU fans, they would say right now they probably feel better about LSU football than they have over the past 15 to 20 years because of who's the head coach. And that's saying something when the past 2 head coaches each won a national championship.
I'd say that's, you know what, Aaron, I got to give you a lot of credit, man. It's always tough to be an outside voice speaking on the dynamics. It's why I'm impressed with the national guys who can do this really well too, which I guess you are of that number as well. But yeah, be an outside voice. And I feel like you have a very firm understanding, right? Like, it is just kind of a fun pressure. It's not actually that much pressure. Like, it's no hot seat. It's not like if you don't win the natty, it's this or that. Like, Brian Kelly even jokes about it. Like, he's joked plenty about, like, I mean, like, after Coach Mulkey won, he's like, geez, actually Jay Johnson did too. They're like, man, she really ratcheted up the pressure. So now it's like, okay, here we go. But no, look, LSU though, but it is kind of like Michigan a little bit, Aaron, where, okay, it's not natty or bust, but this could be your best window for a minute. If Jaden Daniels is as good as the offseason hype has him, because the word coming out of that building is that he's taken over. He's a leader, that he is taking like massive steps forward. He looked really good throwing dimes at the Manning camp the other day, I thought, which, whatever. It doesn't mean too much, but still looked tight. And so, like, I feel you, like somebody said year 3 for LSU in the chat earlier. And I feel that, but next year, you're not going to have all these guys back. You're not going to have it might take a couple of years, and you're not going to have Alabama with, no quarterback and new coordinators and all this sort of stuff. So it might take a couple years for everything to line up this nicely again. So it's not natty or bust, but you have way more of an opportunity to get there and to maybe do it than you would have thought just 2 years ago when Brian Kelly takes over a team that has 39 scholarship players.
I think people also need to understand it is, we think it's so easy to win a championship. It's not. Yeah. It is not easy to win
impossible.
a championship. Like it is. So many things have to go perfect with you. And I've said this, I think, a few times on the show. I give Georgia, for example. Georgia's won a national championship the past 2 years. And yes, they have been the best team in America. But even they had to have things go perfectly right for them. 2 years ago, what had to go right for them? Well, Alabama had to lose their best two receivers to injury to win a
Yeah.
national championship. What happened last year versus Ohio State? Even though Georgia was the best team all season, their top receiver had to get knocked out of the game in the third quarter. And then Georgia
Yeah.
found a way to win in the fourth. Like, there are so many little things that have to go perfect. You have to have, obviously, the talent, which LSU has. Does LSU have the depth? That's the next question. All of a sudden, a couple of guys get banged up. And this is what Brian Kelly's talked about. Like, we haven't built that depth yet. So yes,
Yeah.
starting offense, starting defense, if they stay healthy, then they're a championship contender. But that's the second variable. Are you going to stay healthy? Third variable, are you going to get those breaks? Are you going to have those one or two games where you're not the better team that day, but somehow, God willing, you win the game? Like, it ain't easy winning a championship. I know Nick Saban has kind of made it look like that for the past 12 years, but fans need to realize that it's not just a snap of your fingers, man. There's a lot of variables that go into this.
Yeah, well, and even Nick Saban's never won 3 in a row. He's only won
Yeah.
2 in a row once, I believe, right? It just feels like he's won every single year. So it's funny, man. You quarterbacks are all the same. My old man used to always say the same shit constantly about how, like, to win a championship takes luck. You gotta have some luck.
Luck.
And he was obsessed, dude. He used to always say, sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. He used to love dropping that one. I'm talking like he's passed. He's not passed. I'm very thankful. He's fine. He just lives in New Orleans. One thing I did want to mention here, because in this conversation, what you realized is Scott Woodward hired 3 coaches, 2 of which just won national championships in their second year, and a third which looks poised to have a great season. Now he did also hire Matt McMahon for men's basketball, and that's a whole project not going nearly as well. But Scott Woodward is opening my eyes to maybe how much of an impact an athletic director can actually have. Because in the past, I wasn't ever really sure, right? Because sometimes I feel like it's very easy to think of an athletic director like, okay, you just, you make a hire and then you just kind of sit back and you're like, okay, let's just see if it works. And there is an element of that, right? And ultimately being able to scout talent and hire is probably your single most important thing. But the way that Woodward manages, the way that he empowers these coaches, the way that he deals with a lot of the organizational energy, resources, flow, and he does a really masterful job of kind of funneling all of those resources to the coaches and not telling them what to do with it, but saying, here, look, we have everybody going in line. Now you show us which direction to go. And I hired you because I trust you. We will follow you. And what's crazy is Brian Kelly, if you can get him, is an easy hire. It's a huge name. All right. Like, of course, get him. Kim Mulkey, if you can get her, is a easy hire. The resume is unstoppable. Jay Johnson was not. He had a pretty good resume, but it's a West Coast guy. No reason. It could have been his, but Kelly chose him over a lot of other names that people were wanting and going after. And I mean, he looks like a genius once again. So, and it's so funny because Woodward was always in LSU circles whispered about as like the prodigal son, right? He had to go to Washington where he was AD. Then he goes to Texas A&M. And there was always this like, man, if we could just get Joe Olive out of here, Woodward in here, everything would be fixed. And I always thought that was like a bit hyperbolic and crazy, but it's actually come true. And if you really want to go conspiratorial, who gave Jimbo Fisher that contract at Texas A&M? Scotty Dubs, the Machiavellian prince, knowing he was going to come back to LSU, saddled them with Jimbo and a 10-year, $75 million deal, and then pieced the fuck out and came back home. How about that? His ultimate masterstroke, burying A&M while returning home to LSU.
So good. I mean, I would say I was in the same mindset as you of they just make a hire and then they just kind of sit back. Like if you hire a really good coach, like what else is there left to do for an athletic director? Like give me the damn job. Like let me go look at the best coaches in the country and say, hey, I'll give you X amount of dollars. You want to come be my coach? It's yes or no. I'll move on to the next guy. Like, is it really that hard to be athletic director? And it's funny the timing of this conversation because I was on the phone last week with Josh Brooks. And man, he just sounded exhausted. Josh Brooks, for those who don't know, is the athletic director for Georgia. And he's like, because I was asked, Josh, can you play in my charity golf tournament on Monday? He's like, man, I would love to, but he's like, dude, I have so many meetings. I haven't
Yeah.
slept in my bed. They said in 60 days, I have slept in
What?
my bed in my house about 15 times. 15
What?
times. I'm like, are you sure you're talking about you or Kirby Smart? He goes, no, I'm on the road for SEC meetings, these meetings, going to fly out to boosters,
Yeah.
um, going to this meet and that meet, finding a new baseball hire. Like, dude, it's an absolute grind for these guys. And I think now more than ever, I think you and I are going to touch on this a little bit tomorrow with NIL. Now, also there also is a dynamic of playing against for you're playing with NIL, and you're also playing against it because you need those dollars too. You
Yeah.
need those dollars
Yes.
to
Yeah.
fund projects and contracts and people in the front office. Well, yet you need that money from boosters to also go to NIL. It's like that's a new little area that they're having to deal with also. So, man, it's the more I talk to those ADs, the more I figure out, man, those guys grind because they also got to show love to all the sports. I mean, they
Yep.
got to go to swim meets and track meets and
True.
gymnastics meets
True.
and football games and basketball games and baseball games and softball games. Like, man, they earn their money. That's for damn sure. And
And
Woodward's
then,
definitely earned his money there at LSU.
and if you want to hire somebody worth their salt, like if you want to steal
Yep.
somebody away, you got to have a hell of a pitch, right?
Yeah.
Like you got to have a hell. It's not now money,
Deep
absolutely
pockets too.
money first and
Money
foremost.
won't
But
comes.
even that, you have to raise that money.